Welcome to our Saturday night viewing party. Every Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, I'm trying to do this. We sit down to look back at the week and try to tell the truth about what just happened. Tonight is the story of four men: Lindsey Graham, Kash Patel, Vivek Ramaswamy, and J.D. Vance. The Republican Party has a new phrase for whom this country truly belongs, and they call them heritage Americans. Those are straight, white, Christian men. But none of the four men I'm about to talk about qualify as heritage Americans. One is a closeted gay senator. Two are the Hindu sons of immigrants, both men beneficiaries of the very same birthright citizenship they now oppose. And another one is married to a Hindu woman, she a beneficiary of birthright citizenship, a birthright citizenship her husband calls the dumbest foreign policy in American history. Four men whose party hates them and or their families. But every single one of these four men gets up each morning and goes to work for the people who do not want them in our country. Why? Why would they put themselves through this? How deep is their self-loathing? I set all of this against Turning Point USA being labeled a right-wing extremist group. That would be Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA being labeled a right-wing extremist group by the Southern Poverty Law Center, and why last week, or this past week, it's Saturday, Kash Patel and the Department of Justice indicted the Southern Poverty Law Center. Why would Kash Patel indict an organization that protects him and his family? That is on the table for tonight's heavily edited clip from last Thursday's 3-hour self-indulgent live stream. It was 3 hours. I'm sorry about that. This is a heavily edited clip from that nightmare. So be prepared for plenty of jump cuts tonight. Think of this as French New Wave without all the smoking. A lot of jump cuts you're about to see. I'm in the chat room right now for those of you watching it as it unfolds. And after the premiere, I'm going to be in the comments section down below for you to talk to me for 30 minutes. So drop your questions down there in the comment sections whenever you are watching this, and I will try to answer all your questions throughout the week. Remember, new schedule, live shows at 6:05 p.m. Eastern every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Clips every night of the week at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. It's 8:30 p.m. Eastern on a Saturday night. Here's a clip. Charlie Kirk said he was against all immigration. He changed his tune over the past couple of years. The last year of his life, he was saying all immigration should be banned. And he said, if you're here, assimilate, become an American, only speak English. He was an America firster. And right after he was tragically assassinated, there were attempts to deify Charlie Kirk. Glenn Beck said he was our generation's Martin Luther King. Texas Congressman Troy Nehls tearfully claimed Kirk would be remembered right up there with the apostles who attended Christ's Last Supper. So it doesn't sit well with their narrative about Charlie Kirk being our generation's Martin Luther King or a disciple of Christ. Doesn't sit well when the Southern Poverty Law Center labels Charlie Kirk's organization a far-right extremist group that is heavily connected to hate groups. And that is why on Tuesday, the Justice Department announced it was able to convince a grand jury in Montgomery, Alabama, where the Southern Poverty Law Center is headquartered. They convinced a grand jury in Montgomery, Alabama, to indict the Southern Poverty Law Center. The grand jury charged the Southern Poverty Law Center with defrauding donors. You mean like right after the 2020 presidential election, when Donald Trump raised hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars from MAGA morons who he had convinced that money they donated would be spent investigating voter fraud, but instead he used that money to pay for Melania's stylist and all the lawyers he needed after he was indicted in Georgia and in Washington, D.C. for attempting to steal the 2020 presidential election, as well as paying all the lawyers after he was indicted for mishandling classified documents and paying all the lawyers he needed to defend himself in a massive civil fraud trial, which he lost, the lawyers he needed in the E. Jean Carroll trial, which he lost, and of course the Manhattan criminal trial, which he lost. All of Trump's legal fees, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, were paid by MAGA morons who donated to Trump's super PAC, thinking the money would go towards election integrity. One of the lawyers getting paid by those MAGA morons, the donors, was Todd Blanche. He unsuccessfully tried to defend Trump in the Manhattan criminal trial. He failed, which is why Trump is now a convicted felon. And now Todd Blanche is acting attorney general, who announced the Southern Poverty Law Center's indictment on Tuesday. It was Todd Blanche, acting attorney general Todd Blanche, the beneficiary of donor fraud, right? He made all his money in 2023 and 2024. He was paid through a super PAC where MAGA morons thought they were donating to help Donald Trump look for O.J.'s killer or Nicole Simpson's killer. Remember that? No, they were donating thinking Donald Trump was going to investigate voter fraud, and he was using the money to pay his legal fees. That's fraud. It's wire fraud, quite frankly. It was Todd Blanche, one of the beneficiaries of Trump's wire fraud, who accused the Southern Poverty Law Center of misleading its donors. Why? Because some of the money contributed to the Southern Poverty Law Center was given to paid informers inside neo-Nazi organizations and the KKK, about $3 million. That's what this is all about. Todd Blanche said in announcing the prosecution that instead of bringing down hate organizations, the Southern Poverty Law Center was funneling money to these neo-Nazis and KKK members. Well, no, they were paying informers. But Todd Blanche said if the donors knew their money was ending up in the hands of paid informers, they would be outraged. Well, I donate to the Southern Poverty Law Center. Everyone in my family does. You should be donating to the Southern Poverty Law Center. It's founded by somebody named Morris Dees, I believe, who also was lead singer for Time, I believe. Or maybe that's a different Morris Dees. I don't think he collaborated with Prince. So I donate to the Southern Poverty Law Center. Now, I didn't know they were relying on paid informers. I didn't know that. But if that's what it takes to keep a database on extremist groups, hate groups, if that's what it takes to build a case in civil court to bankrupt the KKK, here's some more money. The Southern Poverty Law Center had paid informers, and up until Trump became president, the Southern Poverty Law Center, in tandem with the FBI, they would turn over information from their paid informants to the Justice Department as friends of the court to help prosecutors mount criminal cases against these hate groups. But Kash Patel, the new head of the FBI, announced last year that the FBI would no longer work with the Southern Poverty Law Center because it had become, he said, its own hate group. So according to this indictment, the Southern Poverty Law Center, over 3 decades, spent $3 million on paid informers. This is what the Justice Department is going after, $3 million. You know what it costs the Justice Department to prosecute? Or it's never going to go to trial, but it's going to cost $20 million for the Justice Department to try the Southern Poverty Law Center over $3 million. But as always, it's not Trump's money, and the Justice Department is his law firm. He's using the Justice Department to get even with his enemies or the enemies of his donors. Nobody who donates to the Southern Poverty Law Center has a problem with that money going to paid informers. So why is the Justice Department indicting? It's to protect hate groups, which, the Trump Justice Department is one of them. That's why this bogus indictment was handed down. If the Southern Poverty Law Center has to drain resources defending itself from the Trump Justice Department, it can't go after people who helped get Trump elected. So you have no idea how angry it makes Republicans that the Southern Poverty Law Center lumped Charlie Kirk's Turning Point USA in with far-right extremist groups, because the logical extension of the Southern Poverty Law Center calling Charlie Kirk a far-right extremist, the logical extension is the Republican Party is a far-right extremist group, which it is. So I'm not going to give you a laundry list of all the things Trump, his administration, his Republicans in Congress have not just said about marginalized communities, but have done to them. We've done too many episodes to go over that right now. And this case will be thrown out because law enforcement and multiple civil rights organizations like the Southern Poverty Law Center rely on paid informants for decades. It's not a crime. But again, this isn't about winning a conviction. It's about using the Justice Department to tie up Trump's enemies in court and massive legal bills. In other words, the process is the punishment, not the conviction. They don't care about the conviction. The process of clearing your name is the punishment. Alongside Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche making this big announcement on Tuesday, we got the Southern Poverty Law Center. Making that announcement was our FBI chief, Kash Patel. Again, last year, Patel said of the Southern Poverty Law Center, it has long ago abandoned civil rights work and turned into a partisan smear machine. Their so-called hate map has been used to defame mainstream Americans and even inspired violence. So he says the Southern Poverty Law Center defames mainstream Americans. Yeah, because the Republican Party has mainstreamed bigotry, hatred, and violent extremism. Kash Patel, he was born, I'm going to talk about him for a second. He was born in America to Indian parents. His parents were not citizens when he was born in the United States. But thanks to the 14th Amendment's birthright citizenship, he came into this world as an American citizen, something his parents were not. As you know, as FBI director, Kash Patel, a practicing Hindu, is part of a Justice Department that is attempting right now to get rid of birthright citizenship. He's also a QAnon conspiracist. Right before becoming FBI chief, he was selling a COVID-19 vaccine detox pill. That was what he was peddling, a pill that will remove the COVID-19 vaccine from your body. He's a QAnon conspiracist, deep ties to Donald Trump's America First MAGA movement. And that movement wants to block Muslims from entering this country, but it also wants to ban immigrants, especially people like Kash Patel's parents, immigrants from India. MAGA morons insist Kash Patel's parents, specifically Indian immigrants, are taking work away from heritage Americans. One of MAGA's biggest complaints is over the H-1B visa, which allows non-immigrant work visas for highly skilled foreigners. People from India are not just highly skilled, but they speak English, so they have become highly prized by American hospitals and tech firms. And this drives MAGA insane. It was Charlie Kirk from Turning Point USA And this is why Kash Patel handed down these indictments on Tuesday to protect Charlie Kirk. It was Charlie Kirk who said last year, quote, America does not need more visas for people from India. Enough already. We're full. Let's finally put our own people first. They do not like Indian Americans. Big problem with Indian Americans. The people who voted for Trump don't like Kash Patel for the same reason they don't like the closeted Lindsey Graham, the senior senator from South Carolina. For the same reason they don't like Tim Scott, the junior senator from South Carolina, who happens to be black. So Tim Scott has his own suite of issues that I don't want to get into. He's a black man in a party that is targeting black people. I can't even begin to discuss the self-hatred that Tim Scott is suffering from to be one of Donald Trump's biggest supporters and to be black. There's a new lawsuit filed last week. It charges the Trump White House in 1 year fired 75% of all black employees working inside independent federal agencies. We see black officers in the Pentagon denied promotions, while Pete Hegseth proudly renames Army bases in honor of Confederate generals. So I'm not going to talk today about Senator Tim Scott's special brand of self-loathing. That's for another show. All I can tell you is being a black Republican senator from South Carolina is hell. It is hell. And it must be hell being a closeted homosexual senator from South Carolina. It's why Lindsey Graham always appears on the Sunday talk shows looking hungover. Now, I don't know if Lindsey Graham is an alcoholic, but that's what people are saying, and that's what people are reporting. Back around 2019, the Daily Beast had an article entitled, quote, Lindsey Graham's drinking problem is no secret in Washington, where they quoted one of Lindsey's former aides as saying, quote, Lindsey has a drinking problem. He's a functional alcoholic, but it's a problem. He drinks a lot, especially in the evenings. Senator John Kennedy, not the good John Kennedy, who was president. This is Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana. In his new book that came out in January, he wrote of Lindsey Graham, quote, invite Lindsey Graham to dinner, and you don't know if he'll sit down for an intelligent conversation or get drunk and vomit in the fish tank, but that's why I like him, unquote. Senator John Kennedy is, there's a reason he's beloved. He's at another level of both stupid and brilliant. He's kind of like Trump. You never know if Lindsey Graham is going to get drunk and vomit in the fish tank. I mean, what a picture. That is just brilliant. Well, one Lindsey Graham staffer anonymously told the Daily Beast, quote, it's not a secret in the office Lindsey would come in some mornings looking rough. We all knew he was drinking heavily. That's why I love to watch Lindsey Graham on the Sunday morning chat shows, because he's, I believe, still drunk. Another anonymous Lindsey Graham staffer told the Daily Beast, quote, he's been drinking more since he became more involved with Donald Trump. It's noticeable. Yeah, it's noticeable. From Politico in 2020, quote, multiple sources close to Graham say he has a drinking problem that has become more pronounced in recent years. While he remains functional, several former aides expressed concern about his alcohol consumption. From The Hill in 2020, Lindsey drinks a lot. It's something people in his circle know about, but no one wants to talk about it publicly. So, Lindsey Graham, according to several reliable sources, is a drunk. Now, he's never been arrested for a DUI. We've never heard of any police reports. But from what I'm reading, from what I'm hearing, based on these news stories, it is a reasonable supposition that Lindsey Graham is a closeted drunk. Why? Because he hates himself, I think. I don't know, but I believe, I suspect, with no proof, I suspect Lindsey Graham hates the fact that if his voters knew who he really was, they would hate Lindsey as much as he hates himself. I suspect Lindsey Graham hates the fact that he desperately wants to be accepted by the people in his party who laugh behind his back and to his face. We know they are laughing now to his face. In 2016, Lindsey Graham ran for president. Back then, he was still a John McCain buddy, and he called Donald Trump, quote, a con artist, a liar, a kook, a nut job. In December of 2015, right before the Iowa caucuses, Lindsey appeared on CNN, and this is what he said of Donald Trump. He's a race-baiting, xenophobic, religious bigot. He doesn't represent my party. He doesn't represent the values that the men and women who wear the uniform are fighting for. He then added, you know how you make America great again? Tell Donald Trump to go to hell. This is why Lindsey Graham's drinking, according to reports, has become more pronounced since he became Donald Trump's lapdog. So that was in 2015. Within 5 months, by about May of 2016, Lindsey Graham had already endorsed Donald Trump for president. And he was terrified of Donald Trump because Trump did something and taught Lindsey not to mess with Donald Trump. Trump is evil, but he's mafia smart. During a rally in South Carolina, at the height of Lindsey Graham trashing Donald Trump went to South Carolina, got to win the South Carolina primary. Lindsey's from South Carolina. Donald Trump literally gave the crowd in the audience the cell phone number for Lindsey Graham. I remember when this happened, I went, what? I've never heard. He said, quote, here's Lindsey Graham's cell phone number. Give him a call. He won't fix anything. He can't, but at least he'll talk to you, unquote. And he posted Lindsey Graham's cell phone number. That is a supreme violation of privacy. And what was that about? Well, Trump knew eventually I'm going to need Lindsey's endorsement. And because, you can't fight with people in your own party, I'm going to need his endorsement. So I need to intimidate him. So Trump gave out Lindsey's cell phone number in a not so veiled threat. He was saying, I got your number, Lindsey. I know who you are. And if I'm willing to give out your personal cell phone number, then I'll have no problem really violating your privacy by giving out something far more secret than your cell phone number. And Lindsey got the message. Well, he got a lot of messages. His cell phone became unusable because all of Trump's supporters began calling him. And it was then that Lindsey Graham debased himself for Donald Trump. He recorded himself good-naturedly taking a baseball bat to his cell phone. He was supplicating himself before Donald Trump. It was an act of debasement. Your personal cell phone number is given out by Donald Trump, and he literally took a baseball bat to his cell phone and said, my bad. Like, I've learned my lesson. Don't mess with this guy. And he then became Trump's lapdog, plays golf with him, brags about being on the links with Donald Trump, loves the proximity, loves it. But in order to tamp down the rage and self-loathing that comes from being someone's frightened little toy poodle, apparently Lindsey has to drink. That's why he shows up seemingly hungover on the Sunday talk shows. And it's why he wants to send American ground troops into Iran. There's a lot of rage being tamped down inside Lindsey Graham or Kash Patel, and it comes out in horrible ways. In Lindsey's case, we need to send ground troops into Iran. So I want to be careful here. It's one thing to be a closeted homosexual. That is not a crime. And it's nobody's business how and whom you choose to love. And if you want to stay in the closet, I don't blame you. It's not easy to come out of the closet. There's probably you may not need to come out of it. Nobody has the right to tell you how you should or shouldn't address your own sexuality, unless you're a Republican senator, in which case that makes you a sociopath for variegated reasons. And I've enumerated countless times on this show why it makes you a dangerous sociopath. And you all know why. You are getting people just like yourself killed. You're forcing a lot of people just like you to end up with no choice but to commit suicide. So it's nobody's business if you're in the closet, and you have every right to stay in the closet unless you're a Republican government official who is participating in what amounts to the torture, I won't say the torturing of the LGBTQ community. And it makes you really sick in the head. It's why you drink, right? That's what you have to do. Which brings me back to our FBI director, who also serves as one of Trump's loyal lapdogs. Now, the base detests Kash Patel for one reason. His parents are Indian. He's a person of color. He's not a real American. He's an anchor baby. His parents were not citizens when he was born here. And no matter how much Kash Patel tries to be accepted by the people who detest him, no matter how much hockey he plays and coaches, he knows deep down inside all he'll ever get from the Republican Party is grudging respect that will quickly dissipate once Trump throws him to the curb, which will be any day now. Any day now. Patel isn't, as Trump would say, from central casting. And eventually Trump is going to need to placate Congress or his MAGA base by tossing more bodies out the window. And when it comes to sacrificing, he'll either choose a woman or a person of color. First it was Kristi Noem. Then it was Pam Bondi. Last week it was his labor secretary, Chavez, and Lori Chavez DeRemer. 3 women all gone in a little more than a month. Trump has no problem getting rid of women, holding them accountable for misdeeds he would be more than happy to overlook if they were committed by a man. So he's going to, there has to be turnover. You have to sacrifice. He could get rid of Linda McMahon. She's Secretary of Education, but she's an old family friend. There's Brooke Rollins, Secretary of Agriculture. Kelly Loeffler, Administrator of the Small Business Administration. Tulsi Gabbard could be next. I could see him getting rid of Tulsi Gabbard. He's not going to get rid of Susie Wiles because she's his White House chief of staff, but she's just been diagnosed with breast cancer, so he's not going to fire her. Although, you never know. I think Tulsi Gabbard could get tossed. She's been willing to do his hard work, his dirty work. She made a criminal referral last week to the Justice Department regarding the activities of John Brennan, Obama's CIA director. She accused Brennan of treason for the role he played in convincing the FBI to launch an investigation into Russia's collusion with the Trump campaign during the 2016 presidential election. That was the good deed she did for Donald Trump. She also showed up in Fulton County for some reason when they seized the ballots. But she's also testified, and this is why I think she's probably going to be fired next. She also testified that the entire United States intelligence community told Donald Trump that Iran gave up its nuclear weapons program in 2003. So I could see him firing her for providing one of the many pieces of evidence that this war is based on a lie. And she's a woman. But I think it's Kash Patel. I think it's Kash Patel because Kash Patel is a lightning rod and a person of color. Earlier in the week, Kash Patel announced that he was going to be suing The Atlantic magazine for $250 million after they came out with a report last Friday exposing Patel as an unhinged alcoholic whose drinking has made him a national security risk. So while Patel was announcing the indictment of the Southern Poverty Law Center, I think this is a picture of Kash Patel making the announcement, he was asked about the story in The Atlantic magazine, and Patel insisted he never once sipped alcohol on the job and said, if you continue to report that I do, I will see you in court. Jamie Raskin is the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee. After that Atlantic magazine story was published, Raskin announced Democrats would begin investigating Kash Patel's drinking, claiming Patel's drinking, as reported in the Atlantic magazine, poses a risk to national security. Jamie Raskin is demanding Kash Patel submit to the World Health Organization's Alcohol Use Disorders Identification Test. It's called AUDIT. It's an acronym, the Alcohol Use Disorders Identification Test. It's a 10-question screening tool that identifies harmful drinking patterns. And Jamie Raskin wants Patel to fill out the questionnaire and then submit the results to Congress in a sworn statement under the penalty of perjury. So if Democrats take back the House, Kash Patel, well, I don't think he's going to be here by then. He is threatening to sue everybody. I will see you in court. How dare you? You have no idea who you're dealing with. I'm suing Atlantic Magazine for $250 million. Well, on Tuesday, a Houston judge tossed out a defamation lawsuit filed by Kash Patel against Frank Figliuzzi. He's a former FBI official who gave an interview with a television news reporter. And during that interview, he said Patel, quote, had been visible at nightclubs far more than he has been on the 7th floor of the FBI headquarters, unquote. So you sue. Kash Patel sued. The judge threw it out on Tuesday. He called the statement, quote, rhetorical hyperbole, which the judge said is protected by the First Amendment. The New York Times on Thursday said the FBI launched an investigation into a New York Times reporter. She was the one who broke the story, the big story, back on February 28th about Patel's use of the FBI's private jet, how he used it to shepherd his girlfriend around the country and attend performances given by her when she sang professionally. The New York Times also reported that Patel has assigned SWAT teams from multiple FBI field offices to protect his girlfriend when she goes outside. The FBI was contacted by the New York Times, which wanted to know why you were investigating the reporter who broke that story. And the FBI said it began the investigation after the story came out and Patel's girlfriend began receiving death threats from that story. And FBI agents wanted to know if that reporter from the New York Times had violated any anti-stalking laws when she was gathering information about Kash Patel's relationship with his girlfriend. So, can't be easy being a Republican of Indian descent, an anchor baby like Kash Patel. Can't be easy for Kash Patel wanting Republicans to like him. Now, I don't know if the article in the Atlantic magazine is true. They have multiple sources claiming that Kash Patel is a fall-down, knockout drunk. I don't know if that's true, but there are reports that he's unhinged, that the FBI had to use a tool from a SWAT team to pry open his door when he was unresponsive, that he was allegedly so hungover, he slept through his wake-up call and the FBI had to kick open his door. Can't be easy being a person of color wanting desperately for Republicans to accept you. Which brings me to Vivek Ramaswamy, who ran for the Republican nomination for president in 2024. Now, he is probably going to win the May 5th Republican primary for governor of Ohio. Like Kash Patel, Vivek Ramaswamy is a practicing Hindu of Indian descent. I believe it's Indian descent. I do know he's a practicing Hindu, and I know, like Kash Patel, Vivek Ramaswamy is the beneficiary of birthright citizenship. He would, as Donald Trump would say, he would be an anchor baby. Both of Vivek Ramaswamy's parents were Indian immigrants who were not citizens when Vivek's mother gave birth to him. Now, she became a citizen. His father, last time I checked, never became one. It's been a year since I checked. But as of a year ago, Vivek Ramaswamy's father didn't love America enough to become a citizen. And despite being the beneficiary of birthright citizenship, Vivek Ramaswamy adamantly opposes birthright citizenship and wants to get rid of it. And when you ask him, well, aren't you the beneficiary of birthright citizenship? And he says, well, it's different. It's different. Like when Republicans need an abortion for their daughter, it's different. Now, you might remember Doja was supposed to be a partnership between Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, but Vivek, after about 3 weeks, was forced out by Elon Musk, who I have no doubt, being a product of South Africa apartheid, didn't like sharing responsibilities with Vivek Ramaswamy. Let's not forget that Elon Musk is one of the biggest contributors to Alternative for Germany Party and Tommy Robinson in Great Britain. So Vivek was pretty much forced out of Doja, and he decided, well, you know what, I'm going to run for the Republican nomination for governor of Ohio. And again, that primary is May 5th, and he should expect to win at least the nomination. He's poured $25 million of his own dollars into a campaign war chest that right now has about $50 million. And this will be a really interesting governor's race. Can Ohio Republicans, come November, Ohio Republicans have become increasingly racist since Trump entered politics. Can they elect the child of Indian immigrants? They elected J.D. Vance to be their senator. He was the one who started the lie that Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio, were eating cats and dogs. Okay? So it will be interesting to see if Republicans, racists in Ohio, can bring themselves to vote for the child of Indian immigrants, a beneficiary of birthright citizenship, a multi-millionaire who serves as a reminder to white MAGA racist voters that people like Vivek Ramaswamy are coming to America and taking good jobs away from stupid, hardworking white Americans. This is not rhetorical hyperbole. You cannot overstate how important a role pigmentation plays in Republican politics. And it will be interesting to see how heavy a lift it's going to be for Vivek Ramaswamy to ask the racist Republican voters in Ohio to ignore his Indian heritage. Ann Coulter said to Ramaswamy after he dropped out in 2024, he was running for president in 2024, Ann Coulter said, quote, "I would not have voted for you had you got the nomination for president because you are an Indian, unquote." That's what Ann Coulter said, unapologetically. "I would not have voted for you because you're an Indian," unquote. You cannot overstate how important a role pigmentation plays in Republican politics. After she said, "I would not have voted for you because you're an Indian," Ramaswamy thanked her for her honesty. That's got to wreak havoc on your innards, being forced to say to Ann Coulter, "Thank you for your honesty." Nick Fuentes is a Nazi, self-described Nazi. He had the #1 podcast on Spotify until Spotify heard what he was saying and they took him down. The dirty, dark secret on Capitol Hill is Republican male staffers under the age of 30 love Nick Fuentes, who has promised to go to Ohio and knock on doors telling Republicans not to vote for Vivek Ramaswamy, specifically because he's Indian. Repeatedly on Nick Fuentes' #1 rated show, he has said Ramaswamy should, quote, go back to India. But he wasn't born in India. He was born in the United States. See, it's got to be tough being Kash Patel, Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy. Got to be tough. Dinesh D'Souza. Got to be tough. After Charlie Kirk's assassination, leading voices in the Republican Party began filling in for Charlie Kirk. He was book solid. So MAGA voices toured college campuses to keep Turning Point USA alive. Vivek Ramaswamy, appeared at a Turning Point event at Montana State in October of last year. It was right after Charlie Kirk's assassination. Charlie Kirk was scheduled to appear, and Ramaswamy filled in for him. And there was a question and answer period. And a young woman asked Vivek Ramaswamy, who is a practicing Hindu, he was asked this question at a Turning Point USA event in October of 2025, quote, Christian voices should be the main voice of America. And I want to know basically why you seem to be, and I don't mean to be horribly offensive, but why you seem to be masquerading as a Christian, unquote. You don't mean to be horribly offensive. I'm surprised someone attending a Turning Point USA event at Montana State had even a clue that what she was saying could be seen as horribly offensive. Christian voices should be the main voice of America. That is what she said, and that is what Turning Point USA believes, which is why it got labeled a far-right extremist group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. So I don't know if Kash Patel is in fact an alcoholic, and I don't know how Vivek Ramaswamy deals with this. But if I were of Indian descent, but felt the need, if I were Kash Patel, but felt the need to protect Turning Point from the Southern Poverty Law Center, if I felt the need to announce an indictment of the Southern Poverty Law Center because they went after Turning Point USA, if I felt the need to do that so maybe Republicans would like me, I would be shooting heroin into my eyeballs to tamp down the self-loathing, the rage, and the anger. J.D. Vance is married to Usha, who, like Vivek Ramaswamy and Kash Patel, also of Indian descent, and who, like Kash Patel and Vivek Ramaswamy, is also the beneficiary of birthright citizenship. So one would think the incredibly racist J.D. Vance, because his wife is a beneficiary of birthright citizenship, would be for birthright citizenship, but he calls it, quote, the dumbest foreign policy in American history. And she stays married to him, and she's pregnant with his child again. Interesting. These are some really sick, self-loathing people. But to J.D. Vance's credit, he was against the war in Iran. So you got to give him some credit there. In October of last year, J.D. spoke at a Turning Point USA event at the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss, in Oxford, Mississippi. Charlie Kirk was scheduled to speak, but he had been assassinated, so our vice president filled in for him. And part of that evening was taken up by a discussion of what it means to be a real American. Now, before he was killed, Charlie Kirk had openly embraced the Great Replacement theory and said, we have to protect our culture before we get replaced. He said, quote, everyone says, well, we just need immigrants to come legally. We just need immigrants to come legally. That's not true. You need to have the proof that you are all in. None of this like multiple passport stuff. None of this dual citizenship stuff. We have a heritage to preserve, unquote. And this was the beginnings of heritage Americans, which didn't gain any purchase until December of last year, the term Heritage Americans. So this was in October in Mississippi. During a Q&A, a woman in the audience asked our vice president this question. This is Turning Point USA. Quote, "You are married to a woman who is not Christian. She still calls herself Hindu. You are raising 3 kids in an interracial, cultural, racial, religious household. How are you maintaining? How are you teaching your kids to keep your religion ahead of their mother's religion?" As in, you can't possibly be running for president and telling us you're raising your children as Hindu. Our vice president's answer was, "I've asked my wife to convert, but she won't. He said, I wish she was a Christian," unquote. So brave. Now, even if Usha Vance converts to Christianity for political expediency, that doesn't change the fact that she is the beneficiary of birthright citizenship and she is not white. And there have been many articles written about how J.D. Vance is suddenly discovering what's been uncorked, the kind of messages that are sent to his wife, that Vivek Ramaswamy, when he ran for president, saw what had been uncorked. Vivek wrote a piece in the New York Times coming out against the concept of heritage Americans. So Vivek Ramaswamy's race, which there's no such thing as race, but his Indian descent, his heritage, it's going to be a big story after he wins the May 5th Republican nomination for governor of Ohio, because Republicans have a big problem with Indians, same way they have a big problem with Jews and the Chinese for the same reason, right? They lump them all together as in those are overperforming cultural groups who are making us poor. So it'll be interesting. So what we saw in December at this big Turning Point USA event in Phoenix, Arizona, this was the big coming out party for Charlie Kirk's widow, Erica. It's where she made it official and declared, "I will fill my husband's shoes. I will be the voice, the face of Turning Point USA." It's where she endorsed J.D. Vance for president and announced millions of Turning Point USA money will be spent on field offices in Iowa to help J.D. Vance win the 2028 caucus. And it was at this Turning Point USA event in December of last year where Vivek Ramaswamy spoke. Some say he got booed. He got scared because he saw at this December event for Turning Point USA where the term Heritage American was getting locked in to the right-wing vocabulary. Now, Heritage American, the term Heritage American, it began nibbling on the edges of mainstream Republican politics when Trump was sworn back into office. But it has since taken root in December of 2025. It's where it gained purchase, as I keep saying. I like saying gaining purchase. Makes me feel smart. In December of 2025, it took hold at the Turning Point USA event in Arizona. It's where right-wing Republicans, white and Christian, openly declared that heritage Americans are real Americans. Throughout 2025, they were asking the question, who's a real American? To which I reply, who cares? Republican Party cares. And the answer is real Americans are those who can trace their ancestry back to the Mayflower, or at least back to our nation's founding. People who can trace their ancestry back to the white Protestants who founded our country. That makes you a real American. You have seniority, and it is your culture that must be preserved. And if you want to come to America, you're not welcome, but if you make it here, do it our way or we send you home. Now, a lot of times people write to me and say that's not true. And I say, Google it. Google it.